Today's episode of Behind the Numbers is brought to you by B. Riley Financial. B. Riley Financial's diverse suite of services goes beyond traditional financial service offerings. By leveraging cross-platform expertise and assets, B. Riley Financial companies are uniquely positioned to provide full-service collaborative solutions to our clients at every stage of the business lifecycle and in all market conditions. B. Riley refers to B. Riley Financial Incorporated and/or one or more of its subsidiaries or affiliates.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Behind the Numbers. I'm Dave Bookbinder. I'm a managing director at B. Riley Advisory Services, and I'm also the author of the new ROI, Return on Individuals. And welcome to the show where we dig deeper to understand what really matters most in business. Today I'm pleased to welcome a friend and colleague, Bill Korn, who is the Chief Financial Officer at CareCloud. Looking forward to a great conversation with this strategic CFO. Bill, welcome to Behind the Numbers.
Thank you, Dave. It's great to be here.
Pleasure to have you, Bill. Tell the audience a little bit about who you are.
Sure. Bill Korn. I am the CFO of CareCloud. CareCloud went public 9 years ago. At the time, we were called Medical Transcription Billing Corporation. 90% of our revenue was really medical billing. 17 acquisitions later, and now we're a significantly larger company. One of the companies we bought was named CareCloud, and since today, over 85% of our revenue is cloud-based services for healthcare companies. We took CareCloud's name, and I've been pleased to be able to take the company public and help it through the journey.
And that's a great segue because you're a 7-time CFO. You've taken companies public more than once, including this one. Talk about the process of going public, Bill.
Sure. So, I think a lot of people look at the idea of an IPO with a lot of trepidation. They've heard war stories. They've heard you need to do lots of filings. You need to have lots of meetings. And, at one level, some of that's true. It's hard work. On the other hand, almost everything in life that's worth doing is hard work. I mean, the act of getting private equity or venture capital has never been described as a walk in the park. And for me, when I joined the company, we were small. We were 10 million in trailing revenue. So most people would have said, a $10 million company, how are you going to go public? Well, even before going public, the business ran as if it was going to go public one day. So audited financials, controls over processes, segregation of duties. You make sure that the person who's working with the vendors isn't the same one writing the checks, and developing a sort of a layer of professional management so that you've got people with real responsibilities. So small company, but acting very much like a big company. So in that respect, going hard actually didn't really change what most people did. On a day-to-day basis, nobody really noticed the fact that we went public. Customers could now say, I'm served by a public company, so one of the leaders in the industry, and that certainly is a good thing. And as we've grown, in part, some of the growth has come through acquisitions, and it's been great to be able to talk to other companies. Hey, we're big, we're public, we're growing. How would you like to be part of this? And it's a real step forward. So you need to do a little bit of work, but on the other hand, it's really rewarding. So I found, and I think I speak for the whole management team, we found the whole process to be a great process. So no regrets whatsoever.
Yeah, and there's certainly a lot of cachet to say that you are part of a public company. But the question then arises, the cost of going public versus the value, the administrative burden versus that access to capital. How have you found balance there, Bill?
Yeah, good question. So for us, the administrative burden hasn't actually been that great. And part of this is that while we're a U.S. company with the headquarters in New Jersey, We got a lot of overseas staff members who do a lot of work for customers, a lot of R&D on our technology, as well as a lot of the back office functions. So, for example, the team that does all the work to prepare 10Ks and 10Qs and interfaces with our auditors, Grant Thornton. I've got a controller who's here in the U.S., but most of the rest of the team is overseas. And in many respects, they were always closing the books every month and preparing financials monthly anyway. So the idea that once a quarter you've got to give them to somebody else to give a 1 week look at wasn't really actually all that big a deal. So I guess I'd say if you're any business, whether you've got venture capital or private equity, or even it's a family business and you're reporting back to other family members, you're going to have to do a lot of this work anyhow. So we just developed the discipline to close the books promptly, put out the numbers, fully baked and ready to go once a quarter, and then literally the only thing that you do that you wouldn't have to do if you were private is once a quarter we do an earnings conference call, and we tell people how we've done. And in some respects, that even helps you sort of focus as a management team, because you want to set the right expectations for the future, and then you want to go and deliver on those expectations, which is what you want to do in any event.
Yeah. In one of our earlier conversations, you made an observation that you can create value by setting up for an IPO, even if you don't ultimately go into an IPO. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. And in CareCloud's case, I think when the company was started, the founder was thinking about an IPO even 20 years ago. But as you mentioned, this is not my first time as a CFO, and I'm also a board member of a couple companies. So I've worked with a lot of other companies, and one thing I've definitely observed is that you'll find a venture-backed company who says, I'm not going to get an exit by going through an IPO. We're going to get bought either by a PE firm, we're going to get bought by a larger strategic player in the space. So why do I need to do an IPO? And then they go, as they're in the process of trying to sell the business. You'd like to think that when you're selling a business, you get 3 people who are bidding on the same day. I mean, that's nirvana when you're selling a house. It doesn't even happen all the time when you're selling a house. It certainly doesn't happen when you're trying to sell a business. So the reality is, if you're really trying to sell the business, what happens is you've got one buyer, and they realize they're the only buyer that day. So they give you a number that makes sense for them, but not necessarily a number that you want, and you have no leverage. What I've seen companies do is go down what's called the dual path. So even if you tell yourself, I don't really think it's going to be an IPO, I prepare. I get my numbers audited. By the way, even somebody private buying me is going to want to see those audited financials anyway. It gives some credibility. I'll put in place a board with a couple of independent directors. I can prepare the initial filings, to be a public company. They can be filed with the SEC confidentially, so nobody needs to see them. But then if I'm going in and having a conversation about selling the business, you can casually drop the comment, hey, we're thinking about going public. If you want to take us off that path, that's great. We're happy to entertain it, but it's going to have to be the right price. And then even if you only have one bid happening at one time, if it's something you're interested in, that works really well. And if it's not, you can say, well, hey, I'm going public, and B. Riley is taking me public. So and you can see my filing, and you can see all the stuff, but stay tuned. And all of a sudden now the buyer recognizes they're going to have to sharpen their pencil. They're going to have to put together a bid as if there's real competition, because they don't know. And by the way, you might actually go public. So you get yourself ready, and I found that really gives you a lot of leverage, and the cost of doing it at the end of the day isn't so much. And again, even if you're a private company thinking about selling privately, you're going to want audited financials. You're going to want the credibility that comes with having put things together. You're going to want to have an organized data room, so that if somebody's interested, all your documents are accessible, password protected online. So you've done all that for the purpose of selling anyway. You might as well do it for the purpose of the IPO at the same time.
Yeah, that's some sage advice. I mean, you're doing everything, buttoning things up for best practices and day-to-day operations, but you've created a window for really creating some strategic value and more options, frankly.
Right.
Bill, for folks who are watching and listening and want to learn more about you or CareCloud or how they can connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Probably the best way to reach me is email. My email is Bill, BILL, at kornintellect.com. KORNINTELLECT.com. And you can feel free to send me a note. I'm happy to talk about CareCloud or talk about your business if you're thinking about going public or really anything else.
Yeah, thanks for that offer. Bill, we're going to have to take a quick commercial break here, so you sit tight. You folks watching and listening, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on Behind the Numbers after this quick commercial break.
Aloha! Joe Silva here with Kukua Technologies. I'm excited to see you on Tuesdays on Morning Coffee for our tech tips.
Let's face it, lawyers get a bad rap. I'm Erin Brucey, host of Legal Breakdown, where we dissect legal topics for the everyday viewer, with a mix of interesting guests to talk about current events and hot legal topics. Let's work together to make the law accessible and relevant to everyone. Catch us every week on RVN Television.
There's an old expression in business that you can't manage what you can't measure. Business performance and business valuation, it's all measured by the numbers. But I've learned that the real lessons and the tough decisions that are made occur behind the numbers. My name is Dave Bookbinder. Join me and my guests as we go behind the numbers to understand what really matters most in business.
Today's episode of Behind the Numbers is brought to you by B. Riley Financial. B. Riley Financial's diverse suite of services goes beyond traditional financial service offerings. By leveraging cross-platform expertise and assets, B. Riley Financial companies are uniquely positioned to provide full-service collaborative solutions to our clients at every stage of the business lifecycle and in all market conditions. B. Riley refers to B. Riley Financial Incorporated and/or one or more of its subsidiaries or affiliates.
And welcome back to Behind the Numbers. I'm Dave Bookbinder, and today we're talking with Bill Korn, who's the Chief Financial Officer at CareCloud. Bill, welcome back. Round two here on Behind the Numbers. Want to jump right on in. Continuing the conversation about what it's like to be going public. Once you are public, and you've got these certain requirements, but part of being public involves equity research. And I know that you're a B. Riley client on the equity research side. Maybe on a few other sides as well. But what's been your experience in working with B. Riley?
Yeah, so it's been great, and we have at this point we have analysts from 6 different sell side firms who cover us. And Mark, who's the analyst from B. Riley, we've met in person many times. Obviously, lots of conversations over Zoom over the last couple of years, and he's really knowledgeable about the field. Sometimes suggests other companies, other people we should meet, other opportunities to maybe partner or grow, and and he's usually pretty insightful in terms of figuring out not only what have we done in the past, but what are we likely to do in the future. And so it's good having him helping to tell the story, because at some level, if you're an investor, hearing from the CFO. Okay, you take that with a grain of salt. Now I'm hearing from an analyst who covers lots of companies in the space. Now they can really tell me what's going on. So it's good having folks like that, who've taken the time to get to know the company and to get to know the industry.
Awesome.
And we've also worked with the investment banking team pretty heavily. On the corporate finance side, B. Riley's helped us with a number of capital raises. I mean, I'd say one of the most notable ones was in early April of 2020. So, the world was just sort of getting used to the idea we had COVID. The markets were sort of in shock. And we'd done a big acquisition. We were feeling good. We didn't need the money, but we thought there might be opportunities. So we said, let's go and raise an extra $25 million just so that we're ready if we want to buy someone. And despite the fact that the market sort of seemed to be closed, they stepped up to the plate, and within 4 hours of starting the deal, I get the telephone call. Bill, we got a problem. What's the problem? Problem is we have so much demand that even if we upsize this round, we still won't be able to give everybody the shares that they wanted. And I'm like, that's a great problem. Good job, guys. So they've been helpful, and they've even helped us go and spend it, because then a couple months later we found a business that was in our space that had been a piece of GE Healthcare, had spun off to a private equity firm. The private equity firm was feeling they were in trouble, and we had an opportunity to buy them on really great terms. And the M&A team at B. Riley found that deal and introduced us there. So I think it's been a great relationship. So we definitely enjoy working with everybody there.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know we feel the same. I want to jump back into your role as CFO, and you shared something with me in one of our earlier conversations that as a CFO, you need to think like the CEO or an investor. Can you expound on that for the audience, Bill?
Sure. And as you mentioned before, this is my 7th CFO role, and I've been in business for 35, 40 years. So it's a long time, and a lot of the time has been as a finance executive, but my training was as an MBA. I have an MBA from Harvard. And I guess I've always learned that you need to approach the world thinking about it as a generalist, not thinking about it as a specialist. And there are times as CFO where I'm taking the banner of we have to have good branding. We have to be thinking about it from how do we add value to customers? Because, by the way, the only way you add value to your investors is if you're adding value to your customers. And I can remember years ago, I was at another company. This was long before CareCloud. And one day, the VP of marketing, whose office was right next to mine, said, "Bill, your voice is loud, and I hear you on the phone all the time." He says, "I never realized this, but you're having the exact same conversations that I am. You're talking about what we do. You're describing our products. You're describing our value proposition. You happen to be talking to investors. I'm talking to customers. It's the exact same thing." He said, "I never would have thought that marketing and finance were so similar, but they are." And I do think that's true. And I do think that as an effective CFO, you need to be thinking about the business. You need to be the person that the CEO can call with a question, and you need to be thinking about how does this make strategic sense for us as a company. So a deal needs to make sense from the numbers, but it also needs to fit. It needs to fit with the people. It needs to fit with the product line. It needs to fit with the strategy. And I think if you take that perspective, then you can be a lot more successful.
Gotcha. Bill, as the CFO, you're responsible for the financial stewardship, and a lot of folks will view the CFO as the number 2 person inside an organization, right behind the CEO. So when you think about leadership and all that entails, what's your lens on that, and what does leadership mean to you?
So I think leadership really means that you're doing the right things. You're treating others the way you want to be treated. Whenever you're making a promise, you're fulfilling that promise. So if you can't do something, you're not going to say you're going to do it. And sometimes that means that the person doesn't hear what they wanted to hear. They wanted you to say, yes, I can fly faster than the speed of light. That sounds really good, but when you've thought about the physics, if the answer is you really can't do that, you say, I'm going to try, but there are some of these laws here, and by the way, this is what I can do, and you've set the right expectations, and then you can deliver on that. And I do think that percolates down from the top, and through the whole organization. You want people to be able to be confident they can tell the truth. They can tell a customer, they can tell a vendor, they can tell another employee, they can tell anybody what's really happening. So they're not making empty promises. They're actually saying things and then fulfilling it. And I think that builds a successful organization.
Yeah, for sure. Over the course of your 7-time tenure as a CFO, the role has evolved, and I talk to a lot of CFOs and hear it all the time. Roles and responsibilities, assuming leadership roles for different functions that are not necessarily the finance function, whether it's HR, IT, et cetera. What's been your experience in leading those other functions, and what's your advice for CFOs who are now going to be taking on those other, we'll call them unfamiliar, if you will, functions?
I mean, I think if you approach it from the beginning saying, I'm a generalist, I'm looking out for the whole business, and I'm not looking out from the strictly finance perspective, it's a lot easier. And, I've managed HR in lots of companies, and sometimes a company gets big enough, it's got its own HR function, but sometimes it's smaller, and in some respect, the most important assets in the company are those people. And so thinking about how am I going to treat the people right? What's the right way to incent people? What's the right compensation plan? At times, I've been responsible for legal, and again, you get bigger, and I'd say by the time you're public, you've got to have a separate general counsel. But still, everything that you're doing in a financial transaction, you have to be thinking about it from a, we're going to do this right legally. We're going to sign NDAs, and we're going to do contracts right, and we're going to do all the filings on time. At times I've managed technology, and I mean, that wasn't true when I was at IBM. Obviously, there were plenty of technologists there, but there's been lots of times that I've been with companies where, I've had more of the technical background than the people who were part of the business, because it's a non-technology business. And finally, there was even a time that I was CFO of a company. I guess this was in the 1990s. And the two founders went off and started a .com, and they said, Bill, we want you to be the COO. So all of a sudden, I was responsible for essentially the full operations of the company. It was a 1,000-person company, and we doubled in size over 9 months in revenue, and added another 1,000 employees in 6 offices throughout the U.S. So, I guess I've enjoyed doing a lot of different things, and I sort of look at it every day and say, how, what else can we do that's new and different, and that's going to add value for the business.
Bill, if the audience wants to get some more valuable insights from you directly, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Sure. Best way is my email, Bill, BILL, at kornintellect.com, KORNINTELLECT.com.
Thanks. Bill, we're getting down to the short strokes here. Just a couple of minutes to go here on this episode of Behind the Numbers. And I want to kind of sneak in one more question, if I might. And that's regarding acquisitions. It's a big part of the CFO function. And as you probably know, depending on where you get your data, anywhere between 75 and 90% of M&A deals fail to deliver on the synergies that was intended. Talk about your experience with acquisitions, and what advice might you have for the CFOs, or frankly, anyone in the audience who may be going through that process?
Yeah. So acquisitions can be great. As you mentioned, the vast majority don't work. And again, I think step one is you got to look at it and say, does this make sense from everybody's perspective? From the people, from the customers of the business being acquired, from your perspective, is it better to do the deal? And frankly, I'd say, if 90% of the deals don't deliver, at least 90% of the companies you talk to don't turn into deals if you're doing it right. And I think that's actually a sign that your M&A process is working well, is when you're saying no lots of times, because you look at the company and you say, no, this doesn't really make sense for me. And I'd say, I've always looked, and that's been true at CareCloud, and it's been true in past jobs too. I've always looked for acquisitions where this business is going to be worth more to us than it is to the seller. So if you show me another company and it's growing 10, 15% a year, and it's making 35% profit margins, and everybody is happy, am I going to make it so much better? Probably not. I mean, being honest, if it's really running perfectly, there isn't going to be as much value created. On the other hand, if it's got some challenges, and for example, I could use my technology, I could use my offshore team to lower their costs. I've got some customers that want their products, or they've got some customers who may want my products. Now, all of a sudden, I can see a way that it's going to be worth a lot more. So I'd say our rule of thumb is we look at a transaction and say, in 3 or 4 years, I want to generate enough profit, enough cash flow to pay back what I paid for this acquisition. And if I can do that, then this is probably going to be a good deal. And even if it takes an extra year, I'm still positive. And I compare that with people who pay, I just saw a transaction in our industry where somebody's paying 4 or 5 times revenue, not 4 or 5 times profit, 4 or 5 times revenue for a company that's never been profitable, that's never even had $1 of EBITDA or cash flow. And you say, how many years is it going to take them to get a return on that investment? In that case, I don't even want to sign the NDA. I don't need to see the information memorandum. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, and one of the great nuggets that you shared in there is something I learned early on in my investment banking career, and that is some of the best deals are the ones you don't do. So when you talk about saying no to a deal, that resonates. Bill, unfortunately, we are out of time here, but I want to thank you so much for joining us today on Behind the Numbers. It was a pleasure to have you with us.
It was great talking to you, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. We've been talking today with Bill Korn, who's the Chief Financial Officer at CareCloud. And again, my name is Dave Bookbinder, and I'm the one that my clients turn to when they want to know what their most important assets are worth. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always happy to have a conversation. Big thanks to our show sponsor today, B. Riley Financial. Do check them out at brileyfin.com. As Bill mentioned, lots of ways that they can help your business. So definitely check them out at brileyfin.com. And thank you for watching and listening. We can't do this without you. Please hit the subscribe button so that you can stay in touch with all that we're up to. And that's all we have for today, folks. You take care. We'll see you next time on Behind the Numbers.
Thanks.